Welcome to Highland League Weekly, the podcast from the Press and Journal. I'm Ryan Cryle. I'm joined, as I always am, or usually am at least, by Callum Law and Paul Third, our Highland League analysts. There wasn't a lot of Highland League at the weekend, just the one game in the competition, which was Strathspey Thistle against Huntly. That was our main game over on the Press and Journal website. We've got full highlights of that as part of our main Highland League Weekly show, which you can watch at the moment if you're a subscriber. If you'd just like to hear the discussion of the results, we'll be talking about not just that game, but all of the Scottish Cup ties involving Highland League sides at the weekend. But yes, we'll start with that game in the league. Strathspey Thistle 3, Huntly 0. Interesting game, this one. The team that had most of the ball in the game came out on the wrong side of it. Strathspey were clinical, Huntly not so much.
I think that's a pretty fair sort of summary, Ryan, really. I mean, in terms of if you go through it, like the highlights that we've watched at Huntly, I think for me they had a couple other decent efforts, but they had 5 really good openings. Sam Robertson had 2, Brodie Allen had 2, Angus Grant had another as well before he went off injured, and it's like, you know, really good, clear sights of goal, and they haven't been able to take any of them, which with the sort of quality of player those chances are falling to, you think they should take some of them. On the flip side, Strathspey, I think Ryan Essen, he's tried a few shapes this season, but playing that sort of 4-4-2 diamond and maybe having the gamble of having 2 up top and maybe accepting that you won't have the same control of the middle of the park at times, that, you know, sort of that balance of can we manage without maybe having as much control in midfield, but then having the 2 strikers to cause problems, you know, that's paid off for them, because I thought Sean Morrison and Callum Brown up front were a handful all the time. Huntly looked weak defensively, but like with runs in behind Sean Morrison and Callum Brown, they got a lot of joy, and that's where all 3 of the goals have come from. Ultimately, they've been positive and made those runs, and Huntly haven't been able to deal with it, and ultimately it's turned out to be a very good afternoon for Strathspey. When those big moments came along, they took their chances, and you look at it for them, it's the first win since early September, I think the 6th of September, when they beat Huntly at Christie Park. They'd been 7 games without a win. If you look at the last 4 defeats they'd all been by a single goal. So they were, you know, they have been knocking on the door, and they haven't been far away in terms of performance, and they've had their rewards on Saturday, and they've found that way to get over the line. And you know, you look at it as well, that's them on to 18 points now after I think 15 games. Last season they got 17 points in the whole campaign, so you know, whatever they're going to do from here, it's been quite a turnaround really for Strathspey over the last year or so, and it's the first time they've done the double over Huntly as well since season 2015-16, so all round a terrific day for them and a great result.
What was your pick of the goals, guys? I thought the first one was a really good finish on the turn, like to find the corner. Josh Race, obviously it's kind of the reactive header finish, but for me the third one, I know from a Huntly perspective you don't want to be conceding goals like that, but I used this phrase before we started recording, but Hollywood pass for that third goal.
It is. I mean, the ball is excellent, but the defending is non-existent. How a long, direct ball like that can find a striker through on goal on his own with nobody near him, I don't know. And that's one for Colin Charlesworth and his players to work out at training this week. But yeah, the touch and the finish is sublime. It happens that quickly where cameraman almost misses it.
Only complaint for me is that the ball, and I double-checked this, the ball touches the ground. He doesn't quite take it down and hit the first time. It sort of bounces after, which would have been even better. Yeah, I mean, Huntly, for me, watching that, the most concerning thing about the footage, Callum, is the 2 injuries. Specifically, Angus Grant. I couldn't quite tell with the second one exactly what was going on, but Angus Grant looked to be a knee issue.
Aye, and Angus has obviously had bother in the past. I'm not sure I can't remember actually if it was that knee or his other knee, but he's had knee trouble in the past. Him and Lewis Crosby both going off, and I mean, I don't know, as we were sitting here just now, how serious the 2 injuries are in that, but we hope for their sake, you know, they're not as bad as they looked. But if either of them are out for a significant period of time, that's another blow to Huntly, and right now they're finding it difficult ultimately. If you even moving away from the injuries, it's one win in 11, and it's pretty sort of potent combination, really, in terms of, as Colin Charlesworth was speaking about after the game, they're not taking enough of the chances they're creating, and then at the other end they just look vulnerable defensively, and teams seem to be finding ways to get at them. So it's, you know, at both ends of the pitch, really, there's work to be done to try and sort of sharpen up and get back to the sort of form we saw at the start of the season.
Okay, well, that was the one game that took place in the Breedon Highland League on Saturday. The rest of the action was across Friday and Saturday in the Scottish Cup. We're going to talk about a few of the results. I mean, a lot of pretty entertaining ties on the surface. Callum, what stood out for you?
Well, there's a few different things. I mean, I'll start with the game I was at on Saturday, which was up at Harmsworth Park, Wick against Benburb, and ultimately a massive missed opportunity for Wick, who finished 1-1 after extra time, and they ended up getting beat 8-7 on penalties. But really, I mean, conditions weren't great. You know, there was a strong wind and at times sort of monsoon-like rain, but I think that was the case across the north. But Wick just, they always looked over the 120 minutes, they always looked the more likelier team in terms of creating something and scoring a goal, and they got into good areas, but in the final third, the last pass, cross or shot was just lacking when they needed it. There was just that wee bit of quality just wasn't quite there. And then when it comes to the penalties, I mean, it was a bit unfortunate in that both sides scored their first 7, Benburb scored their 8th, and, you know, 15 immaculate penalties, and then Mark McCaddy was the unfortunate man that saw his saved, and then they were out. But really, I just felt for Wick, like, especially second half of the 90 minutes, they had some real spells of pressure, and I mean, George Ewan missed what was virtually an open goal for 12 yards and things like that, and I just felt if they could have gotten on top, they would have gone on to win, but they couldn't do it, and then fell behind in extra time and equalised quickly. But given that, you know, it was a home tie, and I didn't think Benburb were particularly good at all, it did feel like a missed chance for the Scories to get into the third round for just the 5th time in their history. And you look elsewhere, some of their standard results, I mean, Banks of D4, Fraserburgh 0, in a lot of ways an incredible scoreline, really, because you sort of, games between those two are usually pretty tight contests overall, and Banks of D, a magnificent display. First half especially, they were 4-0 up at half time. Magnus Watson, I think Mark Gilmore with 2, and then Sam Pugh with the goals, and, you know, just tremendous, no other word for it, really, tremendous, and, you know, winning in that fashion and getting into the third round, great for them. Good tie to look forward to as well, at home to Ross County in the next round. And okay, they maybe would have preferred what you would call a more winnable tie to try and get into the 4th with the Premiership clubs, but, you know, even still, playing a team like a Ross County Stand in a Championship club will be a great occasion for them. And they're now 10 matches unbeaten as well, Banks of D, so they've got real momentum. On the flip side, I mean, Mark Cowie's quotes were very telling, that he said the first half was the worst 45 minutes of his time at the club, which...
It was the opposite for the two coaching staff.
Aye, Paul Lawson, I think, said it was the best for him and Josh Winton, so that kind of sums it up, really, in terms of the Fraserburgh perspective, just not to be for them. You look at some of the other scores, I mean, Clach got back to winning ways, beat Sauchie 2-0, and I think really it was just a case of when rather than if for Clach. They dominated basically from first minute to last, but it took up sort of midway through the second half before they were able to make the breakthrough. But James Anderson, 2 goals in sort of the space of 10 minutes, did the job, and I think the main thing for that was, well, 1, bouncing back for the cup final defeat last weekend for Clach, but 2, first time they're into round 3 since 2012, so, you know, that's a great achievement for them. And in terms of the draw, it's like probably could have been better, like Stenhousemuir away, and I mean, it is winnable, but Stenhousemuir top of League 1 at the moment, and, you know, they've been going well for a while. Draw potentially could have been kinder to them, but the main thing I think for the Lily Whites is that they're in the heart for the next round, and third, he's got a few results. I think he was getting a flag up as well.
For me, Brechin did exactly the same as what Clach did, because there's that pressure of where the favourites were expected to go through, and I think it was 0-0 at half time against Dundonald Bluebell, but Brechin, to their credit, they're thoroughly on top the whole game, and they go on and run out comfortable 3-1 winners. Fraser McLeod, Mitch Finlay and Grady McGrath getting the goals. I think they were 3 up before Dundonald got a consolation, but I don't think the outcome was ever in doubt. And I think that's probably what we might have expected at Wick. Sadly, it didn't turn out that way. The other 2 games that I was keeping tabs on was Elgin 2, Deveronvale 1, and Nairn 1, Turriff United 2, and it's a similar story in both games. The right teams have won both fixtures, but Elgin missed so many chances against Deveronvale, and I mean, they then go down to 10 men, and you're thinking, oh, there could be a shock here, but they've got Highland League experience in that Elgin team. I think Jack Murray puts the 10 men ahead, and then Brian Cameron of Elgin, I don't know what he's thinking when he's standing in his own box, and he just decides to square the ball perfectly for Angus of Deveronvale to score, I think with his first touch after he's come off the bench. And at that point, Deveronvale are thinking, we can do this, we're back in level terms against 10 men, and I think they maybe go for broke a little, and they leave the back door open, and they get picked off.
They lost a really poor goal, the second goal.
It's a ball over the top, squared for Ryan Sargent to roll into an empty net in the closing stages, and you can see on the highlights that have gone up that the Vale players are basically dropping to their knees when the full-time whistle blows. They know they had it there, and they've let it go. Similarly, Turriff, they were comfortable winners, more comfortable than the 2-1 scoreline suggests at Station Park. Miller Keir's penalty and Owen Kinsella's free kick, having Warren come inside 2-0 up, and comfortably 2-0 up. I think they missed a few chances to really add to that. Ben Barron comes off the bench to score a penalty to set up a nervy finale, but Turriff hang on and deservedly go through, but yeah, there'll be a little bit of concern maybe that they didn't make it more comfortable and had to really dig in that last 25 minutes, but yeah, a good result for United on the road.
First time they've been in the third round since 2013 as well, so it's kind of, I think with the teams we've got through, it's kind of interesting that it's quite a few of them, it's maybe teams that in recent times we haven't really seen, making the progress through the rounds the same, so good for some of these clubs definitely to get through. And the only other game we haven't mentioned was the Friday night game for Martin 0, Buckie Thistle 2, and I was there as well, and I think first of all, I mean, it was a great sort of spotlight.
Yeah. What's the worst weather?
I know, have you been a worse game for weather?
I think a Friday night was potentially the worst, just because it was constant the whole time. There was spells on Saturday when it wasn't so bad, but I think it was a great spotlight, an advert for the league, really having the game live on national television. First time that a match involving 2 Highland League clubs has been shown live on national TV, so that was great. And given the wind and the rain, I thought it was a good advert for the league, for folk who were maybe watching a match involving Highland League clubs for the first time. I think, but it was also I'll give credit for Martin's groundsman as well, Paul Fisk. It was also a very good advert for him, because his pitch, given the amount of water, his pitch held up very, very well. And in terms of the 90 minutes, I think Buckie ultimately were more clinical when their chances arrived. Like, the 2 or 3 good openings, and they've taken a couple of them. And once they got 2-0 in front, they didn't need to chase the game. They were quite content to sort of defend, and they did that well. I thought Darryl McHardy was excellent in terms of sort of marshalling their back line. And when Martin did have their moments, Roddy McAllister a couple of chances, there was a Scott Adams flicked header and things. Theo Simpson made good saves as well. And really for Buckie, it's been an up and down season so far, with bits of inconsistency, but we've always known that when they're at their best, they can get a result against anyone. I think for them to be into the third round again gives it, it just lifts the mood a bit and gives everybody something to look forward to. And the draw again, maybe not the best, and in a way, it is it is certainly winnable, but it's one of them where if you'd flipped it round and they'd been at home, I think you'd have, fancied it a bit more. But certainly on Friday's evidence, if Buckie can produce another performance like that, they will have a chance.
That is the sad thing overall, looking at the next round, is Bankside are the only one of the 5 Highland League clubs still in the competition with a home draw, and they get Ross County, which is going to be really tough for them. Bucky going to Hannon, yeah, that's going to be hard. Turriff at Ayr.
I mean, that's another one
know.
like Banks of Dees when it's a great game to look forward to, but it's obviously very, very tough to get through to the next
the fourth
stage.
round's a dream, that's a jackpot they're all chasing, and looking at every game, I mean, Brechin going to Kelty Hearts, maybe, but again, it's tough. And I just think if we get a Highland League side in the hat for the fourth round, it's going to be terrific, but it's going to be tough.
Tough. Ultimately, somebody will have caused an upset if we do get that, because it's all now playing SPFL clubs, or somebody, but it's often maybe the way, like even if you look at like Fraserburgh last year potentially as an example, like they got through the first 2 rounds, then they played Annan in the third round. Generally, although you could maybe, get luck and maybe had more favourable draws, like we could have had an all Highland League draw, and then you're guaranteed somebody getting through. Often, to get to that fourth round, you do need to take that scalp somewhere along the road, and that's what the teams left in will need to do in the next round if they're to get through.
Okay, well, let's have a look at those third round ties in the Scottish Cup. That's it then, all of the action involving Highland League sides across both the league and the Scottish Cup from the weekend discussed. Thanks to Callum and Paul for joining me. If you've enjoyed the show, the good news is you can watch the full Highland League Weekly from the weekend over on the Press and Journal website. We've got highlights of Strathspey Thistle against Huntly from the weekend. You need to be a subscriber to watch that, but the good news is you can subscribe via our sports pack, and that'll get you access to all of the Highland League and Highland League Weekly content. The next time we'll be back with Highland League Weekly is next week after another weekend of Highland League action. In the meantime, keep up to date with everything from us on social media and enjoy the football, whichever games you're watching.